Today, I want to talk about notching, what it is, how it's performed, and why it works. Before I go into the actual maneuver, I think it's best if we take a look at how radar works. Radar technology is based on the Doppler effect. Some of you may have heard of this. Some of you may know what it means. For those of you who don't know what it means, definition is as follows. An increase or decrease in the frequency of sound, light, or other waves as the source and observer move towards and away from each other. The effect causes the sudden change in pitch noticeable in a passing siren, as well as redshift seen by astronomers. Okay, so now we all know what that means. We can move on. Just kidding. I will try to visualize this for those of you who are like me, and for whatever reason can't seem to read a definition and fully comprehend it. I should note that the images I'm going to use to explain this were from a F-15 combat guide for beginners written by Surian from mudspike.com. And I will provide a link to this article down below in the video description. So let's get started with trying to understand how Doppler works. This is a wavelength spectrum, and while Doppler radar doesn't work in only the visible light spectrum, for this explanation, we're going to pretend it does. With visible light, this would be what we would see when we look out over the beautiful Georgian Caucasus plains. We can see the ground, the sky, everything. But Doppler doesn't see everything. It only sees what bounces back. So the sky is not visible on Doppler radar, only the ground. The radar, however, doesn't really know what the ground is, just that something is there. We can just consider this noise. For you older analog peeps, remember this? Not very interesting. You can't really make out anything out of this, can you? Now, what if something was moving? What if you saw something in the noise? Remember this thing? If we see green when nothing is moving, but we see an object moving and it's bluish or purple, what does that mean? Well, it means that the object is moving towards us, because the light waves in this case are reflected back off the object traveling towards us. They are compressed, and when they are compressed, the frequency of those waves is increased, which makes them blue or purple. But what if something is moving away from us? What color would you see? If you guessed orange or red, you get 10 points. Give yourself a pat on the back. I'll wait. So if a radar sees you based on movement that is moving towards or away, how do we make it so that the radar doesn't see us? What is perpendicular? That is correct. When an object is moving at a 90-degree angle to the radar pulse, it becomes noise, just like the terrain. But I can still see the plane, and it's pretty obvious that it's there. Since the sky does not reflect the pulse, but the plane does, this leaves a pretty obvious silhouette. So this isn't sufficient enough to hide from the radar. We have to do one more thing, which is lose altitude. We need to put ourselves lower than the radar so that we are between the terrain and whatever device is sending out the radar pulse. This is much better. Notice that the plane is pretty hard to make out. Obviously, we can make it out with our eyes because we can see the tail and the nose if we look hard enough. But the radar won't be able to do this, at least not in DCS. Now let's try to understand the term notching, or notch. What does this mean? There are a few definitions for notching, but here's one I think is fitting. A slit in an object, surface, or edge. If we think of the headings on a plane, and the definition, slit in an object, surface, or edge, we can conclude that each heading is a notch in a 360-degree surface, and two of those notches make us invisible to the radar. And that is how we get the term notching, which, by definition, is a missile defense maneuver to place threat radar or missile near the beam. Now let's take a look at how this is actually applied. For this demonstration, I'm trying something that I haven't seen done before. And if everybody likes it, I'll continue to try to do it. But I've uploaded all the missions that I've produced for this video for you to practice with. I wanted to make a little bit of a challenge. Rather than just showing you how to notch and move on, I've set up each of the missions so that the enemy has 2 missiles of whatever type, and you have none. And the goal would be to kill the enemy. Now, obviously this is just something for you to mess with, but I will demonstrate that it is possible. I'll show you how I go about doing it, and if you want, you can go ahead and try. It's available for you to do so down below. Okay. So here we have the Mirage, first flight here. Enemy off our nose, 32 miles out. And what I found with the Mirage is the 530 missile is kind of hard to notch. I feel like you have to be spot on when you notch it. And also in this fight, when I went in for the guns kill, I had forgotten about all the changes they made to the aerodynamic model and how a drag is insane now on this thing. So that part we'll probably fast forward through because you don't want to see how terrible I am at this. But let's see here. Okay, so I have a lock, or I am locked, I should say. We have our warning. The only thing I didn't demonstrate real well when I made this was looking down at the RWR, but I'll kind of walk you through. So launch warning, and you can see I'm turning to the right. I'm going to drop some altitude, level out. Let me show you this right here. You don't have to go a full 90 degrees. So like the missile came off in this direction. It was really bad. The missile came off, straight at us, right? Coming down in a line like this. In order to notch the missile because it leads us, the initial thought is, I have to fly this way. So if this is north, I need to go east, right? But this isn't the case because, as you can see, once it starts tracking you, it kind of goes off with you while you're turning. So if it's going this direction, we kind of follow it down. It's going to come here. I need to kind of go this direction. So you need to kind of have that in mind as you're turning. You don't need to do a full 90-degree turn. Just probably, maybe 70, 80 degrees at most. So yeah, just keep that in mind when you do this maneuver. And always, the idea is to keep looking at your RWR to figure out where they are in relation to you. And you can kind of see that in this one, the F-15 and the Su-27 attempts. I do that a lot better, but let's continue on here. So here we go. I dropped some chaff, and already I've defeated this missile. It's going this way for the chaff. Either for the chaff or I notched it. It doesn't know where I am. It's completely dead. So as I kept going, I knew I was really close. And on here you can tell I'm 5.5 miles. So I wanted to try to get away from him a little bit instead of turn back into him. And then I did this slow turn. And the idea was if he fired on me, I would be in a position to notch immediately. And as you can see here, that's pretty much what happens. Pause again here. If you see, this is leading me out here, and I've kind of come across this direction. The angle's probably a little shallower. Here's the notch right here. It's already lost me. So if it's looking at me over here, it can't see me anymore. I'm lower than it. I'm pretty close to the ground here. So this missile's going to go dead. When I made this, I had no idea this was fired. The reason I had no idea was because I was in a bank, and your RWR does not see in this direction. It also does not see in this direction. So if you're on your side, if you're on a roll and you're turning and you're pulling back on the stick, and somebody fires at you, you might not get a warning, just like what occurred here. So I actually didn't even know this happened. I got lucky on this attempt. So yeah, let's continue on. You can see here it kind of tried to lead me, but it ultimately had no idea where I went. And I looked up, I saw that smoke trail. I said, oh, you fired the other one. Let's go in for the dogfighting. So I'm not going to play this whole thing. I'll fast forward it some. But yeah, we'll see what happens at the end here. Okay, so that's over. Usually when I feel uncomfortable in a plane trying to figure out the aerodynamics again, I take my time. I figure as long as I don't do anything stupid, my hope is that they will at some point. And right here I actually dropped my gear because that slows you down, because I wanted to keep up with them just for visual effect. There we go. That's it. Let's move on to the next plane. Okay, so in this one, I am in an Su-27, and I'm going up against an F-15. The F-15 has 120Cs, and I wanted to use the 120Cs to kind of show that they're not as OP as everybody says. They do have some things about them that make them pretty OP, but for the most part, you can defeat them just like any other semi-active radar missile. So first thing I wanted to do is drop altitude. Whenever I play the 27, I always fly as close to the ground as possible, usually in the mountains, kind of a hide-and-seek tactic. I don't know, just suiting playstyle for the aircraft. So that's kind of why I dropped down early here. But yeah, so we look at the TAC view. You can see he's going to fire, and when he fires, which he just did, I don't get a warning. I get nothing, and that's because I'm using, or he's probably using, track while scan, so I don't get a lock. I get absolutely nothing. And then about here, there's my warning. So you can tell the missile is already halfway to me, and this is why most people die to the 120, and everybody freaks out. Oh, the 120 is OP. This missile has now become pitbull. It is now tracking me on its own. The F-15 can lose lock. This missile will still be on me. And I think this is something that people miss, is the fact that it's already halfway to me. So when you're going up against an F-15, you have to anticipate this kind of stuff. For this video, I didn't, because I wanted to demonstrate that it's not necessary, but it's better to. So I'll go ahead and continue on, and we'll see how close it actually gets to me. So I go ahead and turn. Try to get my notch angle right. I kind of overdid it a little bit. But right here, I'm pretty sure in this frame I've actually notched this missile. If we look at the angles here, this is kind of coming down here, and I'm kind of going this way. That's pretty much a right angle. The downside is this missile, since it goes pitbull and tracks on its own, it will reacquire me if I break the notch. So if I turn back in, it will see me. It will continue to attack me. So this is what makes it hard about this. Because it reacquires you, you still have the lock warning. You get it again, which makes you think, oh, maybe he fired another missile. But in fact, it was just this same missile reacquiring you. It also doesn't mean that it's going to hit you. If we watch this, it will reacquire me, and it'll track me, and it'll turn, but it is going much slower by this point because it's kind of given up, or something happens. I kind of actually want to go back at some point and in DCS see what the missile's actually doing, because I feel like when it hits this point and it gets notched, it really loses a ton of speed, and I don't necessarily know why. So let's go ahead and continue on. So you notice I look down my RWR, I don't hear anything, there it is again. So you can see here, this is kind of turning again. So I lost it. It wasn't on my RWR. I didn't have the warning notification anymore, but here it is again. It's tracking me to some degree, but it's also really slow. If I were just to continue to go straight, even if I made like a really long bank, this would never hit me. It's going so slow at this point. So you don't really have to worry about it, but that's something you don't know. And it just kind of takes experience and practice to kind of figure out. So let's continue. So I just pumped some chaff just in case. I had no idea. Like I said, I didn't know it was dead. You can see it's gone. I defeated that one. So now at this point, I was completely notched to him. So he was probably having a hard time picking me up on radar. And I kind of realized that, and I ended up making a turn to try to help him. Here's my bank. Actually, probably made it worse. But anyway, he fired at me. So now we can see this missile was tracking. And here's an interesting thing. So that missile shot off in this direction, right? And I was traveling that direction, so we would have met here. But you can see it turned back in. And the other thing you can see is I kind of started turning this way, I guess. And let me erase this. If you look closely, right here, there's some chaff. I started dumping chaff. The reason I started doing that is he was really close. That launch warning came. I have no idea how far this missile is, but I know those 120s are pretty deadly. So I was throwing everything I could at it. You'll notice this is starting to turn here, right? It came out this way and now it's starting to turn. That's because I notched it and then it saw the chaff. It's going for the chaff now. So let's go ahead and continue. And then it seemed to have reacquired me and kind of got confused or something. But either way, you can see it slowed a ton. So there's really no worry anymore. But you can see it's kind of snaking here. It's trying to get me, but it can't. It's not going to be able to. I'm going to also point out this, in case you guys don't know. This is the Russian RWR. It seems much simpler and not as good as like the F-15s or the Mirages, but I kind of don't believe that. I think in some ways it's better, some ways it's worse. The worst part about it is you have this huge blind spot here, here, and here. Whereas in the F-15, you can kind of get a true appearance of what angle that missile or bandit is coming in at. Whereas here you just have these dots, right? You have all these dots right here, 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 here. And then you have this one here and this one here. So it's not a real good representation of an angle. And sometimes you'll have like this dot and this dot lit up, and that means it's a dead center to you, right? But that's kind of weird to understand. The other thing is that this is a 90-degree angle, this is a 90-degree angle, but this is 50. So what happens is from like 70 to whatever this is, I don't know, 145 or something. Let's say it's in between. That one light will light up for this entire degree spectrum. So when you're notching, it's really hard to understand exactly how much of a notch you're in because you have such a wide variation for this one light bulb. So that's kind of the downside to this. The good side, the upside, is that this light ring right here is signal strength. So the more lights, the stronger the signal. And what we can take away from that is range. And it's not always 100% accurate because depending on what is pinging you, the signal could be strong or weak. But For the most part, you can tell how close something is depending on how many of these lights you have lit up. And usually the range you want to be afraid at is here. So right now you can tell we're not in that range. We're really close. And you can see this is probably 3 miles. So this isn't a true representation. Like this isn't 20 and this is 15 and this is 10 and this is 5. That's not how it works. So I usually try to just think of it as this is the zone I want to really pay attention to. If something's here, it can be anywhere from 10 miles to 20 to 30 miles away. It depends on the radar. It depends on how strong the radar is. So this is like a whole nother topic on its own. I won't go too much more into depth about it now, maybe another video, but I just wanted to kind of point that out. This is a hard aircraft to notch with because of the way this RWR works. So let's continue. So now I've defeated both missiles. I still had that warning, pop some more chaff. I was pretty sure, and there it is again, that missile didn't go dead. It kept reacquiring me, but it was so far away that I was in really no danger, but I couldn't know for certain. So I just kept pumping that chaff, turning to the left. And then I realized, okay, we're good. He's locking me. I know there's 2 missiles down, so let's go in for the guns kill. We'll go ahead and watch that. So at this point, I knew I wasn't going to get a beat on him, so I went and chose to gain some speed by dropping down. And he ended up doing the same, so we kind of got in a little bit of a scissors there. But then he made the mistake of turning in front of me, so, you know, that was his fault. So he loses a wing. Yep, and that's that. All right, we'll move on to the next video. Okay, here we are in an F-15 against an Su-27. And what I wanted to do with this is go for the high ground. I wanted to be at a much higher elevation. The reason I want to do this is in the F-15 you usually fight at a higher elevation, and you're usually fighting Su-27s who are at a lower elevation. So this kind of was to try to simulate a more real world for DCS, a real DCS world approach. In this, you're going to have to use chaff. You can still notch, but it's not as good unless you're using chaff. So I went ahead and leveled out about 12,000. He's still below me, probably around 7,000 or 8,000 feet. And I'm just waiting for that missile shot. He's about 20 miles out. So there it is. So I go ahead and go into the notch. And along the way, I start chaffing. About here, I think. Yep, there goes the chaff. You can see it on the TAC view. And I turn again. Let me pause here, point out a couple things. So on this RWR, much easier to tell where the bandit is. Obviously, this is not where the missile is. So you can tell I'm 90 degrees to the bandit, right? He's off that way. Missile is this way. Coming this way to try to intercept me somewhere over here. And here's my chaff. And I'm against his radar, right? So missile should go dead pretty soon here because I'm pretty much at a 90 degree to his radar. So we'll go ahead and watch for that. The other thing is this chaff is important. The reason this chaff is important, I'll throw an image up here. When the chaff is seen against no background and you're against no background, and you're in a notch and nothing's moving, then the radar has a hard time picking out which one of those objects is you. It just sees 5 blobs in the air, right? So it picks one at random. boom, I'm going to go for this one, or I'm going to go for this one, and then this one, and then this one, and then this one, and it can't figure out which one it wants to go to, so you end up getting away that way. So that's kind of why you want to use chaff. You should probably just be in a habit when you're going to a notch, dump some chaff. It doesn't hurt. But especially when you can't get the background to be the ground. Let's go ahead and continue on. You see here, dump some more chaff, missile went dead. There it is. It's turning off this way. It's probably looking at the chaff. So at this point, I knew the bandit was pretty much on my beam, so I ended up turning in so that he could get another missile fired off on me. And this time I turned in pretty hard and he shot, so I just continued my turn. So right off my nose there. And dove to lose some altitude. And dump some chaff. And boom, missile defeated. And on the TAC view here, you'll be able to see, I'll kind of move it around here, but that missile went straight for the chaff. You can see it there. It's going right for that chaff. Boom, right where I was. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So now I know he's out of missiles. I'm going to try to go in for that guns kill. So there it is. Yeah, so if you guys have any questions, go ahead and leave the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, like, thumbs up, do whatever. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. It was fun to make. A little bit longer than I thought it was going to be, but I think all the valid information was there at the end. So thanks, guys.